The Orioles traded away 8 players off their major league roster in the past week. So who comes up to replace all those guys? We'll talk about that coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Friday, August 1st, 2025, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, with the trade deadline behind us and the Orioles having traded 9 total players from their big league roster in the past month or so, the real question is, especially when you trade away 6 guys on deadline day alone, who's coming up to fill those roster spots? Because the Orioles didn't trade for anyone who is major league ready right now among the 16 prospects they got back. So the AAA Norfolk roster is going to look a lot different. Which players will fill in on the roster? Which players will move into starting roles? We're trying to take a look at what the Orioles roster is really going to look like for the final 2 months. That's coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. Go to 5hourenergy.com today and use my promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off your order. Only valid through September 30th. Order transfusion-flavored 5-Hour Energy shots today. So the trade deadline is past us. We are into August. It ended at 6 p.m. Eastern time on Thursday evening, and the Orioles traded 6 players in the 24 hours leading up to the deadline. 9 players traded away from the big league roster in total in kind of quote-unquote deadline season, although the Brian Baker trade was well before that. From the bullpen, they traded away 4 relievers, Brian Baker going to the Rays, Andrew Kittredge to the Cubs, Seranthony Dominguez to the Blue Jays, and Gregory Soto to the Mets. They traded away just 1 starter. That was Charlie Morton, sent to the Tigers. And then among the position players, Ramon Laureano and Ryan O'Hearn both went in a package deal to the Padres. Cedric Mullins was also sent to the Mets, and Ramon Urias dealt to the Astros. Those are 9 big league players, all who played a significant role in this 2025 Orioles team, all going to be in other uniforms today here on Friday, which is going to be, especially for some of them like Mullins and O'Hearn, wild to see them wearing other jerseys. But now it's time for other players to step up into their roles. And the one thing the Orioles didn't do among the 16 prospects they got back in these deadline trades is really get anyone who is big league ready. Like, there are guys who are close. There are guys who are already in AAA. There are guys who are going to be in AAA pretty soon from these trades, but no one who you could feel good about just sticking right on the big league roster. And I thought they might get 1 or 2 players like that in these deals, and they didn't. So you got to fill these 9 roster spots. Really, it's 6 roster spots, right? But because the ones for Baker, Dominguez, and Soto have been filled since those trades happened, weeks ago or much earlier in the week in Dominguez and Soto's case. But either way, those are roster spots that now we know, okay, they got to be filled for the next 2 months because you didn't really get big league right now level players. Some guys who will help the Orioles in 2026, but not potentially ready to do that at the moment. So who will fill in? Where will they come from? How will they fill in? And what will this roster look like for the final 2 months of the year? That's what today's episode is fully about, because not just deadline day, but it was also an off day for the Orioles. They traveled to Chicago for this weekend. If you do want to hear about every single trade that the Orioles made, especially on Thursday, the 6 deals they made within 24 hours, I did a full trade deadline live show. You can watch it right here on the Locked On Orioles YouTube page. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. You can also get that show wherever you get your podcasts. It is over an hour long. It is maybe the longest episode I've ever done. We broke down every single trade they made Thursday in detail. Make sure to go check that one out. Now it's kind of turning the page. And let's begin with the Orioles starting rotation, because the starting rotation was hit, I guess, the softest of anything. And that is a little, not surprising, but you thought more starters would be dealt. Charlie Morton was the only one traded away. He was sent to the Tigers like a deadline buzzer beater. Right at 6 o'clock on Thursday, that deal came through. We knew they were going to trade Morton. He was, I believe, number 3 on my most likely to get traded list for the Orioles, and he was dealt away. But Zach Eflin and Tomoyuki Sugano were also out there, both also rental starters. Sugano had just been really so bad leading up to the deadline that it made sense. Nobody really wanted him. Eflin, came back from the back injury, made 2 okay starts, and I thought he might have a chance. And then Eflin went back on the injured list on Thursday with more lower back pain. Ken Rosenthal did report that even with him going on the IL on Thursday afternoon, there were still trade discussions with him because it wasn't an arm injury, wasn't an injury that's going to keep him out for a significant time, hopefully just a couple more weeks, and then he's back. But that obviously took another cut into his trade value, which was already cut because of his injuries and bad performance so far this year. So Eflin stays as well. But with Eflin going on the IL, he still opens up a roster spot, at least for a little while. So Morton's spot is gone for good, and Eflin's spot is open for a little bit right now as well. What I will say is this is probably the easiest fix for the Orioles in terms of filling those spots, because so far it's 2 with Morton and Eflin. The first thing to talk about is Cade Povich is making rehab starts. He's been out for a while with a hip issue, made another rehab start in AAA, his 4th one. That was on Tuesday, and really does look ready to roll. And so I think he's going to fill one of these spots. He is eligible at any point now to come off the injured list, just about the Orioles having space for him and feeling that he's ready. In that start Tuesday, he wasn't perfect, but it looked like he was ready to return to the majors. The Orioles have announced their Friday and Saturday starters. Trevor Rogers will start today. Tomoyuki Sugano will start tomorrow. Those two are going to start either way, no matter what happened at the deadline. But Sunday is still TBD for the starter. Now, another potential there is Brandon Young, who was reportedly, I believe officially now, recalled to the roster to take Zach Eflin's spot with him going on the IL on Thursday. So Young is back. Young last started in game 2 of the doubleheader on Tuesday, which means he would be on regular rest to start on Sunday. So basically, my guess would be either Povich or Young starts Sunday. My guess would be Young because he's already on the roster and Povich is still technically on the injured list. So it seems like Young will get there. So you have Rogers, Sugano, Young this weekend. Then Dean Kramer would be on regular rest to start Monday in Philadelphia. And then you would need a starter on Tuesday against the Phillies. That is where I think Povich comes in. It'll be a week since his last rehab start. He should be good to go. You can activate him then, and Povich gets into the rotation, and then you can go back to Rogers on Wednesday in Philly. You have the off day Thursday, and you get things rolling right there. So you have a rotation of Trevor Rogers, Tomoyuki Sugano, Dean Kramer, Cade Povich, and Brandon Young. That is my guess for now. Now, you don't have as much depth as you once did behind that rotation. Again, Eflin's on the IL. Albert Suarez is still on the IL. Chayce McDermott has been kind of fully moved to the bullpen in AAA at this point. So your main top 2 depth options at the moment, at least, were Cameron Weston, who's been in AAA the whole year, an Orioles pitching prospect. He's been okay. And Roansy Contreras, who's been a starter in the big leagues before with the Pirates. O's brought him over on waivers this offseason, has kind of been built up back to a starter in AAA Norfolk. Those are the top 2 options. But the Orioles did add another option on Thursday. It is technically the only player they added in a trade. It is left-hander Dietrich Enns, who was DFA'd by the Tigers this week when they were adding players to their roster. The Orioles essentially claimed him on waivers, sent some cash to the Tigers to make it an official quote-unquote trade, and he will join the Orioles, and Enns is out of MLB options, so he will be joining the Orioles big league roster. So while I think Cade Povich takes a starting spot in the long run next week, Dietrich Enns is going to get one of the open roster spots, you would think, here on Friday, and at the very least, be here until Povich is back next week, and we'll kind of see beyond that. Now, Dietrich Enns is a 34-year-old left-handed pitcher who has been with the Tigers this year. He'd been in Asia for a while. He debuted in the big leagues with Minnesota in 2017, pitched in a couple of games, then was in the minors for a while, then resurfaced with the Rays for 9 games in 2021. It was actually really, really good. Then he went over to Japan, pitched 2 seasons as a starter in NPB in 2022. He was awesome. In 2023, he was not very good. And then he went to Korea, pitched for the LG Twins, was teammates with Hyun-Soo Kim over there, and had a 4.19 ERA in 30 starts in Korea last year. And the Tigers signed him to a minor league deal this offseason to bring him back to the States. He was in AAA for a while to begin this year with Detroit and was putting up just insane numbers as a starting pitcher. Made 14 starts in AAA, 62 in the third innings, had a 2.89 ERA. I mean, the strikeout to walk numbers were tremendous. 27% strikeout rate, just a 6% walk rate. Opponents hit 246 against him in AAA. So the Tigers called him up. He made a couple of starts, then got moved to the bullpen. Overall, 7 appearances, 2 starts, 17 and 2/3 innings. It's a 5.60 ERA and a 3.54 FIP in the big leagues so far. Again, 17 and 2/3 innings, 15 Ks, 4 walks, 23 hits, and 2 home runs allowed by the left-hander Dietrich Enns. In terms of stuff for him, it is a 5-pitch mix. It's a 4-seamer that sits about 93. It's just a solid pitch, has, an okay movement profile. Like it's a pretty good 4-seamer, especially for a 34-year-old lefty who's only throwing 93. It's a pitch that, just kind of certainly gets the job done for him. He's got a changeup, uses it a lot against righties. It's been hit pretty well this year. It's got a 320 batting average against it. He's also got a cutter. He'll try to jam into righties. Pitches at 85 is just kind of okay. Curveball does get some swing and miss. Also has a sinker. Doesn't throw either of those pitches very much. It's mostly 4-seam, changeup, and cutter for Enns. The stuff overall, stuff models like it. It's a 111 stuff plus on the fastball, 114 on the cutter, 100 on the sinker, 111 on the changeup. He's got a 109 stuff plus overall. That's a really good number, especially for a 34-year-old. And that's probably the biggest reason why the Orioles picked him up. The other one is, again, he started 2 games in the big leagues and 14 games in AAA this year. He is starting depth. So I still think in the long run, the Orioles go back to Cade Povich. But if the O's wanted Dietrich Enns to start on Sunday in Chicago, they could absolutely do that as well. He could even, he's going to be on the roster either way, but he could even fall into the rotation for a little bit if the Orioles needed him to. But eventually, I do think a guy like Cameron Weston will get a look. He is Rule 5 eligible this offseason for the first time, so it'll be good to get a look at him now. And that also means eventually there's going to be space for Kyle Bradish and Tyler Wells whenever the time comes for them to return. Bradish has made 2 rehab starts so far. Wells has made 1, both coming back from elbow surgery. Expecting them back at some point in probably late August. There's always the chance that Wells is just a reliever when he comes back, but Bradish will be a starter. So, 2-3 weeks from now, you could have the 2 of them back in there as well. And the Orioles, they'll have some flexibility in finding the best ways to get them innings for the remainder of this season. So I would think those 5 with Young and Povich and Enns factoring in, and then we'll see Bradish and Wells at some point. That'll be a little easier, though, for the Orioles to figure out. Next up is the bullpen. The Orioles traded a lot of relievers, already a lot of moving parts in that bullpen. What in the world is that group going to look like for the remainder of the season? We're trying to parse that out coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. It's time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this is a hole-in-one for your energy game. And let's be honest, some days on the course or off it, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and stay energized. Maybe it's on the big golf course. Maybe it's on the mini golf course. Maybe you had a late night of watching the Orioles. You're trying to stay up for trades. And you just need a way to get yourself through your day. And that's where the 5-Hour Energy can come in. And for golf as well, it's all about good times with good people and good flavors, of course. The grape, ginger, lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without chasing down the Bev card. And if you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get their energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion-flavored 5-Hour Energy shots today. So we've taken a look at how the Orioles might change up their rotation after trading Charlie Morton and putting Zach Eflin back on the injured list. Now let's look at the bullpen, because with all these deals, it's kind of a mess right now. As I mentioned, the Orioles have traded 4 relievers off of this team. Sir Anthony Dominguez to the Blue Jays, Gregory Soto to the Mets, Andrew Kitchers to the Cubs. That all came this week. And then a couple of weeks ago, of course, they did also trade Brian Baker over to the Rays. So that is 4 relievers down, all guys they trusted in that pen, all high leverage guys. And then, of course, you also have the fact that Felix Bautista is currently on the injured list. He's been there for a week with some shoulder issues and inflammation. They're still kind of waiting for the swelling to go down to get another MRI to see exactly what's going on. in his shoulder, but Bautista is out for the foreseeable future. And there is a chance here that Bautista, just out of an abundance of caution and the injury, misses the remainder of the season. I mean, I'd say at least a month he's probably out. I wouldn't expect to see him back until September. It's going to be a good chunk without him, and maybe the rest of the year as well. So you can take him off the list too. That's maybe your 5 highest leverage relievers gone out of the bullpen, maybe for the rest of the year. What in the world do you do? Now, on Wednesday's episode, we did kind of take a crack at this same question because, Dominguez and Soto were already gone. And we were trying to figure out what in the world is going to go on out there. Corbin Martin had just come in to lock down a save the night before against the Blue Jays. You're like, who's going to get all these chances? Now with Kittredge gone, it's like, yeah, all the high leverage guys are out of there. Right now, Keegan Aiken is back from the IL. He is your top lefty. And in theory, your Cano is still here. He's your top righty, but of course had that full meltdown on Wednesday in his last outing. Is certainly taken a step back here in 2025. I don't think you can trust him, even though he's your most polished and experienced reliever. I don't think you're throwing Cano into the closer role right now. You would think you would from name recognition, but the way he's pitching, I wouldn't put him in those spots. I'd be putting him in more low leverage spots for a little bit just to get his groove back. So there probably won't be a set closer the way this bullpen is put together, but I think Corbin Martin, just because he got the chance on Tuesday, will probably get some more chances. He didn't look great, but he found a way to put up the 0 and get the save. So maybe next time he'll be more settled in. You'll have Grant Wolfram on the roster. He's shown some good stuff. He's been up and down, but he'll be the number 2 lefty behind Keegan Aiken. And so right now in the bullpen, you'll have in your Cano, Keegan Aiken, Corbin Martin, Grant Wolfram. And then you still have Cade Stroud, who's been up and down in AAA. Elvin Rodriguez just got called up on Wednesday, hasn't pitched yet. And same thing with Houston Roth, got called up for the first time on Wednesday and hasn't pitched yet. Those 2 are currently on the roster. Now you still have Kittredge's spot to replace. We'll see what roster move the Orioles make. Yarmiel Geraldo will be back when he can in a couple of weeks. He's been very up and down this season, shown some good stuff. But it wouldn't shock me at all if Matt Bowman is recalled here on Friday just to replace Kittredge for now. It gives you a guy who can go multiple innings and a guy who just has more experience than basically anybody not named Cano or Aiken in that pen. I think it's good to get a more experienced, veteran guy, right? He's in his mid-30s. He's been on this team for multiple years now. He's been up and down. I think that would be helpful to have Bowman in the bullpen for a little bit. Not sure if that's the long-term fix for the rest of the season, but my prediction is Bowman gets added to the open roster spot. But again, Geraldo will be in that mix. You got Scott Blewett and Colin Selby both on the injured list right now. If Selby will come back, Blewett, we'll see. If either of them 2 come back, they'll jump right back into that bullpen mix too. And I think there will be a lot of chances for Chayce McDermott to pitch out of the bullpen. Kind of still, for some outlets, the consensus top pitching prospect in the system. He's come up and made a few big league appearances over the last couple of years, but the command's been an issue. Injuries have been an issue. He had a little bit of a shoulder thing that kept him out for a couple of weeks. He came back in AAA this week, and his last 2 AAA outings have been in short regular relief. They've been, starting him this entire time since they got him at the deadline 3 years ago. But he seems to be on the DL Hall path. Electric stuff, good height as a prospect, too many command issues to survive as a starter, but might look really good if he's moved to the bullpen. That's exactly what happened with DL Hall before they traded him to get Corbin Burns. I'm not sure McDermott was going to be in a trade. It's possible, but the O's have decided it's bullpen time. I don't know how much of that is injury stuff, because again, there's been shoulder and elbow issues this year. But the last 2 outings have been, 1 to 2 inning stints. The fastball velo's been off. The command is still kind of erratic, but let's let him settle into the bullpen role. It's very different for a starter to go out there. But McDermott could be the bullpen X factor down the stretch. I'm not sure if he gets called up now, but I wouldn't be surprised if in 2 weeks after he keeps working out of the Norfolk bullpen, feels comfortable in that role, the Orioles add him to the pen as a 1 to 2 inning guy and really let him eat and see what he can do and see if maybe he's a go-to reliever for 2026. That is a definite possibility for McDermott. And then you've got Tyler Wells coming back. And again, I think the O's are going to build up Wells as a starter on rehab, but there's a chance he ends up in the bullpen by the end of the year. I think Wells long-term is a reliever. In the 2026 roster, I think Tyler Wells is in the bullpen rather than being a starter. So when he comes back, he's an option. And then you got some other guys in AAA who will provide you some depth. Vinny Natoli, Jose Espada, 2 guys the Orioles signed in the last couple of weeks to minor league deals who have some big league experience out of the bullpen. Levi Stout's a guy, I really like his stuff. Cianel Perez is still down there in Norfolk if you did need another lefty. But this also allows Elias the flexibility to work the waiver wire. And that's really the biggest thing here. Like, there's already been some interesting pitchers to go on waivers. Matt Manning was out there, but the Phillies jumped in and grabbed him via trade before he could really get to waivers. There's a couple of interesting Brewers pitchers. Brian Hudson, who had an amazing 2024, kind of fell off this year, is on waivers. The O's have space on the roster where they don't have a lot of set relievers. They have a lot of guys with minor league options that can be easily sent back to AAA, that if you do grab a reliever or two on waivers, you can kind of open up space for them. And that is going to be helpful down the stretch, less for this team winning and more for next year's team being able to put together a full and good bullpen to be a winning team again, right? You can try and find the next Brian Baker, Danny Coulombe, Cionel Perez, Jacob Webb, etc. Basically the way the Orioles have built these bullpens, right? Even the next, it doesn't even have to be guys who are that good. You can find the next Joey Crable types, right? They give you like 1 year of being good, and that can be enough. A lot of teams right now, they're going to DFA some arms because they're making room for the guys they traded for. It was a wild and busy deadline on Thursday. A lot of moving parts, a lot of roster space that needs to be opened by good teams. They're going to DFA some interesting players. Eve Rosenbaum in the Orioles front office is like the number one waiver wire person. She's going to be on it. And the O's are going to bring in a few arms via waivers to give them a chance to throw and see what they can get out of him. And this is what I think the goal is for this bullpen for the rest of the season, right? Even with the kind of Cano struggles and even with now Bautista having another injury question, if we want to think a little bit positively here and say, okay, Bautista will at least be good for next year and Cano still has the stuff to at least be a solid middle reliever, which I still believe is the case, that gives you three guys you at least feel good about heading into next year. Felix Bautista, Yennier Cano, Keegan Aiken. That leaves you 5 open spots in your bullpen. I think Tyler Wells will have one of them. I'm predicting the Orioles will bring in enough starting pitching that they won't need Wells as a starter. Maybe they will at some point next year, but I think he'll start the year in the bullpen. Then at least one free agent signing, an Andrew Kittredge type player. And then 3 of these, all these names I just mentioned, 3 of them stick and you feel good enough about them to be in the bullpen. Now, in a perfect world, it's 2 free agent signings, and then you only need 2 of these guys to stick, and that's possible as well. But this is just to give some wiggle room, worst case scenario. 3 of these guys stick. 3 more are at least good depth to have in AAA that you can call on when you need them next year, and the rest of them kind of go away. If I had to make a prediction right now, I think they make an intriguing free agent signing, and then the 3 guys that stick are Grant Wolfram, Corbin Martin, because why not, and Chayce McDermott. That'll be my guesses for the 3 that stick in there. They get the free agent signing. Maybe they add another good lefty, and you kind of go to it from there. But these last 2 months, again, it's going to be difficult to watch this bullpen sometimes. There's going to be some ugly nights, but hopefully it pays off in the long run where they can find that next batch of guys, add to it in free agency, and have a strong bullpen again heading into 2026. But now, maybe the hardest one to figure out, right? There's not as many openings in the lineup. There's still like this core of players that is together. But I was having the toughest time just figuring out who the O's are going to call up to replace the hitters that they got rid of. So let's try to figure that out to finish off the show coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Game Day Hue. And so is the hat that I've got on right now for this episode. For Orioles fans like me, this one hits the mark. Game Day Hue makes clean, no logo gear with team-inspired colorways for every pro and college fan base. It's all about letting your colors speak for you. No giant logos, just smart, versatile style that works on game day, on the course, or anywhere in between. I love the hats. I got 2 of them from Game Day Hue. It's subtle, it's stylish. I can rep my team, and it pairs with my usual gear, and I can wear it anywhere. But it's not just hats. Check out their split shade gloves, made for the golf course, or the perfect gift for the fan who has everything. And right now you can get 15% off with code MLB15 at GameDayHue.com. That's GameDayHue.com. The code even stacks on bundle deals. So now's the time to load up. Let your colors talk, because colors speak louder than words. That's GameDayHue.com. Code MLB15. So for the Orioles, the one final question about what this roster looks like for the final 2 months is what they do with the openings among the position players, because as I mentioned, they traded away a few of those as well, 4 to be exact. Ramon Urias was dealt to the Astros. Ryan O'Hearn and Ramon Laureano in a package deal went to the Padres, and then Cedric Mullins was sent to the Mets. So there are 4 openings for position players on this roster right now. Let's start with Ramon Urias, because his kind of has the easiest one-to-one role. He was already not a starter, right? You have Westberg, Henderson, Holiday, and then the first base split on the roster. Urias, although he fills in a bunch, he has been kind of the utility bench infielder. That's more of a one-to-one switch. You're calling up someone to replace that exact role. I would guess either Luis Vasquez or Jeremiah Jackson comes up to be that utility infielder. Either one would probably play less than Urias did, just because probably not as good of a big league player right now. But that is all dependent on how healthy the Orioles starters stay. They are healthy right now, but we'll see what happens moving forward. Now, Vasquez has more time in the big leagues, right? When he was up here for a good chunk, while Jorge Mateo spent time on the injured list, didn't play a whole lot, actually pitched almost as much as he hit as the Orioles position player pitcher. And I think they like him in that role. But Jeremiah Jackson, also, the minor league signing, 25-year-old from this year, just broken out onto the scene, has a 181 WRC plus in AAA. That has made him quite literally the best hitter in all of AAA baseball in the 2025 season. He was on the roster for one day last week when the Orioles needed a player, and then they sent him right back down to AAA. I wouldn't be surprised if Vasquez gets the spot, but I think I would give it to Jeremiah Jackson, and I would play him, twice a week, maybe just find a way to get him into the lineup and just see if this bat is actually for real, what you're seeing in AAA. And then you can make a decision on him. Maybe he is your next Ramon Urias. There's a chance to give him that look. Now, Ryan Mountcastle is also pretty close to coming back. Actually, as of today, Mountcastle is eligible to be activated off the 60-day injured list with that hamstring issue. He's been playing in, rehab games in AAA for about a week plus now. The bat looks good. Exit videos look good. He's running around well. He's playing some first base. I don't know if it's going to be today, but he's pretty much about ready to come off the injured list. Obviously, with Ryan O'Hearn traded, that's a pretty easy one-for-one swap. You get a first baseman for a first baseman back on the roster. And that one's fairly easy. We know that's going to happen. Now, with Mullins and Laureano both being traded out of the outfield, this is where the tough decision comes. Now, Dylan Carlson is already on the roster. He's going to stay there. He becomes kind of your backup center field option. And the biggest question is, okay, who plays center? It's going to be Colton Cowser. I am fairly certain Cowser is going to move over from left to center and pretty much be the everyday center fielder for this Orioles team. When he does get a day off or so, Dylan Carlson will be the guy who plays center. I really like Dylan Carlson. I think he might stick around on this team, but he can certainly play center field, handle the bat okay as a switch hitter. But Cowser is going to get that everyday role. Righties, lefties, I don't think it'll matter. I think Cowser, and not even for this year, potentially for 2026, Cowser might be your everyday center fielder. He's going to slot over there. So you have 2 open spots. I would absolutely call up Dylan Beavers. I mean, he's got a 150 WRC plus in AAA. He's one of your top hitting prospects, former top draft pick, gone through all the swing changes. It's all coming together. He absolutely deserves a shot. There wasn't a lot of room. Now there is room. I think it's the easiest move in the world. I hope there's a roster alert here on Friday. Dylan Beavers has had his contract selected. He's Rule 5 eligible this offseason anyway, so you're no doubt going to add him to the 40-man roster in November at the latest. Why not just add him now and give him 2 months to find out what you have with him going into 2026? I think it's a no-brainer to get Beavers up here. The interesting thing is the other spot, because in theory, the other spot would be an opening to bring Heston Kjerstad back to the big leagues, right? He's been down in AAA for, about a month to 6 weeks. And he was really bad in the big leagues, but you thought like that reset down there would work. His line in AAA is somehow twice as bad as his line was in the big leagues, seemingly. In 112 plate appearances in Norfolk, Kjerstad slashing 192, 240, 327 with a 28% strikeout rate and a 28 WRC plus. That's right. He's been 72% worse than a league average AAA hitter. Now, when guys go down for AAA resets, you don't always want to take everything from the stat line because they're always working on something. They're always it's a swing change, it's an approach change. Clearly the O's they got to be doing something with Heston Kjerstad. So you take all those stats with a serious grain of salt because there's different things he's thinking about than just get a hit when he's up there because he's working through mechanical things. But that's still really bad for a guy who you would think has enough talent to be a little bit better when he's working through things. So he hasn't really earned the call up, but this is another chance to give him leeway. Unfortunately, Heston hasn't played in a AAA game since July 25th. That's since Saturday? And the Orioles placed him on the 7-day AAA injured list with what they're calling just general fatigue and are hoping he can bounce back with a little bit of time off. So even if he comes back soon, like Kjerstad's not ready to be recalled here on Friday and join the roster and fill that open roster spot. I do think we will see Kjerstad again in the major leagues at some point down the stretch, mostly because O'Hearn, Mullen, Floriano were all traded. That's enough leeway to give Kjerstad a little bit of space once he's healthy. But it's not going to be right now. So, I mean, maybe this is the opening for a Judd Fabian, potentially. Like that's maybe, 67th overall pick back in 2022. Made it to AAA last year, was terrible. Back to AAA this year, much better. Still hitting for a low average, but he's walking. He's hitting homers. He's got a 107 WRC plus. He's playing a great defensive center field. He just came off the injured list. He had a wrist issue. He was just activated on Wednesday and started in the game and went 1 for 4. So I don't know if the O's, 2 days after bringing him off the IL on a wrist issue, want to bring him right to the big leagues. They might want to let him settle back into Norfolk for a couple weeks. So maybe he's an option, but maybe not because of the wrist thing he's been dealing with, even though he is back. Jordan Adams, if you remember this, back in June, was on the roster for like a week when Cedric Mullins was out, and he was just there to basically be the backup center fielder. He was like a defensive replacement and pinch runner late in games. He's now all the way down in Double-A, but the Orioles have already called him up once, so maybe you just see Adams for a few days, and then you go to Fabian, and then you go to Kjerstad. That is, I guess, possible. You could reward Vimael Machine. It was a minor league signing in the offseason, hitting 290 with a 118 WRC plus in AAA, hit another home run on Thursday. He's got 15 of them. Maybe you give him a little leeway to run. Terrin Vavra could come back, right? He's been back and forth. What I think the Orioles will do is just maybe bring back Terrin Vavra because it's a known quantity, right? You can just go get Vavra and say, all right, you might sit on the bench, you might not, you might play, you might not. Whatever. It kind of is what it is with Terrin Vavra at this point. But Vavra is also in Double-A right now. Now, some of that could be because of, the Bay Sox being at home and being closer to Baltimore and the Tide's not. But he was just sent down to Double-A. So I'm thinking is that because the Orioles just sent him down there like 3 days ago, they were planning on it being Terrin Vavra to make sure he's closer to Baltimore when they need to call him up because the Bay Sox are at home this week. So that would be my guess. They could just roster both Luis Vasquez and Jeremiah Jackson, but I think my prediction would be Vavra, at least for the moment. So my prediction is Jeremiah Jackson, Ryan Mountcastle, Dylan Beavers, and Terrin Vavra come back to the roster. So that leaves you with, against lefties, you're probably looking at Holiday at second, Westberg at third, Henderson at short, Adley at catcher, O'Neill in right, Mountcastle at first, Cowser in center, Mayo DHing, Carlson in left. And then against righties, more often, same start to the lineup, Holiday, Westberg, Henderson, Rutschman, then Cowser in center, O'Neill in right, Mountcastle at first. Then that's where you probably play Beavers in left and Mayo DHing is probably your lineups there. So your usual bench is Alex Jackson, Jeremiah Jackson gets in there a little bit. Alex Jackson, the backup catcher, plays on the day games. Dylan Carlson jumps in a little bit. And then I wouldn't see a lot of starts for Terrin Vavra. If he is on the roster, maybe more holding a spot for a Fabian on a Kjerstad to come back and play a little bit more. That is my predictions. We'll learn on Friday because the Orioles, they have a baseball game to play. So either way, we are going to find out who is joining this roster because it's not only a baseball game, they're playing the earliest baseball game of anyone after the deadline because the Orioles are going to the Windy City to take on one of the best teams in the National League, the Chicago Cubs, where they just traded Andrew Kittredge, so he might get to face his old friends here today. And it is the classic Wrigley Friday day game to start this series, a 2:20 p.m. Eastern time start on a Friday. Third time this week, you get to watch some baseball at work. I know I'll be doing that. It's on MASN 2. Trevor Rogers takes the bump with his 1.49 ERA. He goes up against the 23-year-old rookie right-hander Cade Horton, who's been really good this year. 3.67 ERA in 13 starts, and he's got back-to-back scoreless starts he's coming off of. He's throwing the ball really, really well. Then on Saturday, it's another 2:20 start. This one's on MASN 2 and on Fox Sports 1. Sugano goes for the Orioles, and another young right-hander, another rookie in Ben Brown, will take the ball. He's got a 6.22 ERA on the season, hard-throwing righty. And then finally on Sunday, again, it is TBD for the Orioles. It's going to be one of Young, Povich, or Dietrich Enns starting that game. We will see. But Matthew Boyd is going for the Cubs, veteran lefty who I wanted the Orioles to sign this offseason. They didn't. He's got a 2.47 ERA in 21 starts. He's an all-star. O's kind of missed out on that one. And then I will be back on Monday, recapping everything that happens in the 3-game series at Wrigley between the Orioles and the Cubs this weekend, and get you any further updates on roster moves, traded prospects, injuries, all that good stuff is coming up on Monday's episode. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.